In this short video, I'd like to suggest that we might better manage our stress by developing a different perspective, by developing a different relationship to stress. Last week, we looked at the triangle of stress reactivity. We defined stress as a perception that we do not have the resources needed to meet a particular situation that comes up. We talked about the 4 categories of stress. There are acute or short-term stressors, chronic or long-term ongoing stressors. There are external stressors that come from outside of ourselves that we cannot control. And there are internal stressors which come from inside of ourselves, from our own thoughts, expectations, behaviors, fears, and anxieties. We also noted that stressors can arise from both positive or negative events. We also noted that any category of stressor, regardless of whether it is positive or negative, causes an activation in the body. This activation results in physical changes, such as an increased heart rate, faster and shallow breathing, increased muscle tension, and stress activation also causes the release of 2 stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. This stress activation also causes mental activation, resulting in thoughts and emotions related to feelings of overwhelm, worry, and anxiety. This activation is unavoidable because it is biological. It is what the body does in the face of stress. The physical and mental activations are uncomfortable, so we want to do something about it. So we react by coming up with a coping strategy. Most of our coping strategies try to distract us from the discomfort. They try to numb the discomfort or avoid the discomfort. So we may eat or drink or sleep or procrastinate or turn to our computers and phones. Done in moderation and for a short time, our coping strategies may ease our feelings of discomfort that come from the activation. But often we do these coping strategies automatically, and it becomes excessive to the point where these coping strategies are no longer adaptive. They result in creating more stress, which increases our activation further, and we end up trapped in a cycle of maladaptive behaviors and increasing stress. This is what happens when we are in automatic pilot and unaware of what is happening in our bodies and with our thoughts and emotions. So this is a course on mindfulness. So of course we are going to bring mindfulness to this triangle. So now we are mindful. What will change? Will mindfulness change our stressors? Probably not. Many of our stressors are external and they are chronic. They will not go away just because we become mindful. It's not magic. Will mindfulness change our activation? The answer is no. Our activations are natural responses. They are biological. They are built into our bodies. In fact, we want and need our bodies to activate so that we can respond if there is truly a dangerous situation. If a car runs a red light as you're crossing the road, you want to activate and jump out of the way. So even with mindfulness, our activations will not change. If we are mindful, will our coping mechanisms and reactions change? Well, maybe, but we're not perfect. Old habits and behaviors don't change just like that. And sometimes our behaviors are so automatic and so ingrained that they happen so fast. Sometimes we're yelling before we know it, or that glass of wine or that bag of chips disappears down our throat before we know it. Old habits die hard. So where does mindfulness help us? Even with mindfulness, we have the same stressors, we have the same activation, our coping mechanisms and behaviors are ingrained and hard to change. So where does mindfulness fit in? How can mindfulness help us? Let me introduce a modification to our triangle, and we will call it the triangle of stress awareness and response. In this triangle, we bring mindfulness to the situation and see where awareness might help. With mindfulness, we may become aware of our activation. We might notice a body sensation. Oh, I'm clenching my jaw. Or we might notice a thought or feeling. Oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Or, wow, I have these thoughts of inadequacy. Noticing these sensations catches our attention, and we can bring mindful curiosity to investigate it. We ask, what's going on? My jaw is clenched. What's going on? I feel overwhelmed. What is going on? Or with mindfulness, we may become aware of a reactivity. Oh no, I just yelled at the kids. Or, wow, that bag of chips just disappeared really fast. And again, we bring a mindful curiosity to our reactivity. We ask, what's going on? I just yelled. What's going on? I just ate way too much. What is going on? In automatic pilot, without mindfulness, these activations and reactivities would have happened. We just do what we do automatically, and we would not have known, and we continue to cycle around the triangle of stress. With mindfulness, we become aware of our activation, or we become aware of our reactivity. How does this awareness make a difference? First off, simply becoming aware gives us an opportunity to pause. It gives us an opportunity to ask, what's going on? In that pause, we can be with the awareness of the activation. We shift from doing mode to being mode. And in that pause, when we can be with what is happening for a moment, we can discover what is happening, and this gives us some space to make some choices. When we become aware of our activation and we ask what's going on, when we stay with the difficult or unpleasant sensations of being activated, and when we begin to explore them with curiosity by asking what's appearing in my body, what's showing up in my thoughts and emotions, this gives us a little pause, a little space that enables us to choose our next steps. We can bring attention and intention towards the choosing of a response. What is interesting is that even with awareness, our behavior might not change. We might need to use a loud voice so our children hear us, or we might choose to have a glass of wine, or we might procrastinate and put off the project for a little bit, or we might watch an hour of Netflix. But now we do it knowing that we're doing it. We are not an automatic pilot. Or sometimes our activation and reaction happen so fast that we are not aware of the activation, but we do become aware of our reactivity. We might think, oh shoot, I yelled at the kids again. Or, oh shoot, I just wolfed down that bag of chips. But becoming aware of this reaction, even after it happens, also brings a pause. And we can choose to be with our reaction. We can choose to be with what we just did. We can observe what we just did without judgment. And this is the important part, without judgment. And this gives us a pause that gives us space to maybe choose a different next step. Our next step might be to do some repair. For example, if I yelled at the kids, maybe I need to apologize or make amends. If I ate those 3 bags of chips, maybe instead of beating myself up about that behavior as I usually do, I could do a short self-compassion practice and extend some kindness and support to myself. Finding ways to support and take care of ourselves and others leads to skillful coping strategies. Skillful coping may include choosing to make a change or adjustment that addresses either the stressor or the behavior instead of the usual resisting, avoiding, distracting, numbing, fighting that we do in autopilot. Addressing the stressor might involve changing jobs or ending a relationship or hiring some help, etc. Addressing the behavior might involve getting some counseling or joining a support group. changing our diet, calling our friend, etc. But as is often the case, we have no control over the stressor, and sometimes we have no control over the behavior. And so, in those cases, we can choose to adopt an attitude to support ourselves. For example, self-compassion or self-kindness. Having an attitude of self-care is a resource that we can offer ourselves. What we begin to do is that we begin to develop some skillful choices that lead to skillful strategies that provide ourselves with support and resources. According to the definition of stress, stress arises when we perceive that we do not have adequate resources to meet a situation. By becoming mindful, by becoming aware of what is happening in our moment, we give ourselves a pause to find the resources that we need to meet each moment. And this, giving ourselves resources, will reduce our perception of stress. Even in very difficult moments, if we support ourselves, we are giving ourselves a resource to help us navigate these difficult moments. In this way, slowly over time, with trial and error, with lots of kindness, with patience and withholding of judgment, we start to develop some new skillful coping strategies. We start to develop a different way of being with stress. Within each one of us, if we pause long enough to listen, we have the innate wisdom within ourselves to give ourselves what we need to support ourselves through each of our moments.